Orson Welles was born in 1915. He was an enormously influential actor and a director of theater, radio, and film. By the age of 19, he had already acted on the Broadway stage. In 1939, RKO Pictures offered him a two-picture deal in Hollywood, and at the age of 25, he directed, co-wrote, and acted in Citizen Kane. At that time, Citizen Kane's critical success was not matched by acceptance in the film community. The film was offered to be purchased and destroyed. According to Film Site, the film engendered controversy because it appeared to fictionalize and characterize certain events and individuals in the life of William Randolph Hearst, who happened to be a powerful newspaper publisher. The film was accused of drawing remarkable, unflattering, and uncomplimentary parallels to real life. Now it is considered the most impressive debut in the history of film. Wells illustrates Citizen Kane's content by utilizing form to see the content in a particular way. Looking at movies describes form as cinematic language, which are the tools and techniques filmmakers use to convey meaning and mood to the viewer with lighting, mise-en-scène, cinematography, performance, editing, and sound. Mise-en-scène, also known as staging, is the sum of what the audience sees, hears, and experiences while viewing a movie. Thatcher's first encounter with Kane in 1871 is a scene that creates deep focus using mise-en-scène for the specific placement of design elements. Techniques in Citizen Kane discusses how deep focus used the space between the foreground and the background to symbolize Kane's loss of power and control, which illustrates his personal isolation.
You seem to forget that I'm the boy's father.
It's going to be done exactly the way I've told Mr. Thatcher.
There ain't nothing wrong with Colorado.
This movie frame shot is an example of Wells' usage of deep focus cinematography. The audience is given a choice of where to look rather than limiting their attention to a certain focus. There are three main shots in the scene: the mother up front, the father at the door, and young Kane outside the window in the background of the shot. While we see the mother signing away the control of her son's life, we see the innocent young Kane, oblivious to his fate, playing outside in the snow. This scene is formed by a long take with only 2 edit points, with a moving camera that alters its view and perception of the scene so that objects, distances, and people assume different meanings throughout each series of actions. According to a full review and analysis over Citizen Kane, free camera movement, perspective, and visualization become a schematic method of communication from Kane himself. The camera pulls back from viewing young Kane playing in the snow. It pulls increasingly backwards into his mother's boarding house through the window in the dining room, making Kane diminish in size and distance, while still the focus of the show. He is isolated inside the window frame, which highlights his solitude and entrapment, while the rest of the shot depicts Thatcher, Kane's mother, and father inside the boarding house. The camera position and angle throughout this scene depicts a lot of meaning as well. Movie Site portrays how the scene is shown at adult height looking down on young Kane, emphasizing once again his powerlessness over the decisions that are being made about his life, and marks the last moment of his childhood by showing his sled slowly being buried beneath the snow. Lastly, there is symbolic meaning with the lighting used in this scene. According to Looking at Movies, lighting is responsible for significant effects in each shot or scene. It enhances the texture, depth, emotions, and mood of a shot while also extending the illusion of depth. Lighting affects the ways in which we see and think of movie characters by revealing a character's state of mind. A full review and analysis article over Citizen Kane illustrates how in Kane's little boy scene, he is depicted as innocent, surrounded in white snow, which makes him illuminated in light, revealing no moral ambiguity, secrecy, or evil. However, in later scenes, his face is shown half lit and half dark, shadowed, or in total darkness to visually reveal his inner solitude, ambiguity, secrecy, evil, and torment. For example, when Charles Foster Kane first meets Susan Alexander, there's a clear contrast between the two characters, which signals important differences. This contrast is the difference between the use of high-key lighting and low-key lighting. Looking at Movies explains how the lighting on Kane's face is low-key lighting, which produces a sharp, dark shadows, causing his face to be lit with a hard and crisp light, which makes him appear older and much more worldly. Kane's lighting is being contrasted by Susan Alexander's, who appears to be in high-key lighting, which causes an even, flat illumination that expresses virtually no opinions. In this soft light, she seems much more youthful and naive.
Oh, I didn't say.
I didn't think you did. If you had, I wouldn't have asked you because I would have remembered. How old?
Pretty old.
How old?
Citizen Kane appears to have strong similarities to a film written by Preston Sturges called The Power and the Glory. Sturges' film came out roughly 8 years before Wells' film. Although some may say it influences Citizen Kane's flashback style, Wells announces in an interview with Peter Bogdanovich that he has never seen it but has heard of these strong similarities. According to the article The Power and the Glory of Citizen Kane, both films have the same idea of a lead character. The story is similar, and it is told in a similar way. Like Citizen Kane, The Power and the Glory is told in flashback. Preston Sturges begins his film with Tom's funeral, then going back to his childhood when he grew up poor, while Orson Welles had a similar beginning with Charles Kane dying, leaving us with the word rosebud, and then it goes back in time illustrating what his life was like, using the deep focus staging and many scenes to depict their lives. Both films depict the lives of dynamic businessmen who rise to fame and then fall. Another similarity Peter Bogdanovich brings up in the interview with Orson Welles was the idea for the famous breakfast montage between Kane and his first wife. Welles admits that idea was stolen from the Long Christmas Dinner of Thornton Wilder, that was a one-act play which takes you through 90 Christmas dinners in the Bayard home. Throughout the play, it shows the changes in customs and manners during this period of time, as well as the growth of the family. After completing the breakfast scene, thinking he invented the idea, he suddenly realized that he unconsciously stole it from Thornton. The breakfast table montage was a similar idea, but takes you through a 9-year deterioration of Kane's marriage. Philip Brophy points out in his article how Kane and Emily's first breakfast table encounter, you can tell they are much in love by their excitement in their voices and their enthusiasm towards one another while being really close and engaged to what the other is saying. However, as their marriage crumbles across each hyperelliptical edit, the music becomes sullen and solemn, the pitches of their voices become lower and monotone, and they speak less, finally saying nothing and reading opposing newspapers while sitting across the table from one another.
Emily, dear. Your only correspondent is the Inquirer.
Sometimes I think I'd prefer a rival of flesh and blood.
Citizen Kane remains highly regarded for its illustration of cinematic language, which is why it still upholds the #1 spot of the top 100 American films.